Feel like a star, but only strictly where I'm famous. I'm in this for the longest haul, like we'll see where it takes us. I'm throwing back these double shots like whiskey here is weightless. Cause this career I chose was even riskier than Vegas, yo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Colby Rebel Show. I am your host, Colby Rebel, where my goal is to make that connection or answer that question, and questions we will answer tonight. So very excited to have a very, very special guest in the house. You guys are in for a big, big surprise. I have literally People Magazine's official astrologer, Kyle Thomas, in the house with us. And tonight, he is going to explain all the hacks of astrology we need to know. And Kyle literally is the go-to celebrity astrologer for anything you need to know about what's coming up, what's coming in. He has been everywhere from Good Morning America, NBC, CBS, Fox, all the magazines, like expert. So we are really excited and honored to have him. And so we're not even going to waste any time. We're just going to go ahead and get started and bring him in here because we have a lot of questions to ask him. So put your hands together for Kyle Thomas, everyone. Hi, Kyle.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to chat with you and your audience and dive into all things astrology.
I am so excited to have you here, and really this is super exciting. And you know, I've always been fascinated by astrology and kind of how it works, because it almost seems like there's maybe a little bit of science to it, a little bit of destiny, a little bit of interpretation. I'd love for you to just share with me what astrology is to you and how does it work?
Totally. Well, one of the first things that I do talk about with people all over the world is that astrology is not a science, but an art form. And that's what brings a lot of different nuance to it, whether, you know, you're consulting with me or a different astrologer. And that's the thing that I think is so beautiful about it, is because we're going to have, you know, certain interpretations that are going to be, you know, unanimous throughout a transit or, you know, the meaning of a planet. But, you know, one of the things that I think is also so wonderful about it is that we take our personal experience and then weave that into it and provide an interpretation. And the thing that I think is so cool too is that there are so many different kinds of astrology and different tools that you can use within it too. So, you know, I practice Western astrology and I really focus on transits and understanding a natal chart and looking at the pieces of the strengths and the weaknesses and how we can maximize our potential utilizing our birth charts and the astrology of the time. So yeah, that's just kind of like my intro to it, I guess.
I love it. And how did you get into astrology? Is it something you fell into? Is it something you were called to do? Can you share with us a little bit of like how it came into your realm?
Totally. Well, the thing that I think is so funny is I really do feel like astrology chose me, and it's crazy because I've been studying it for almost 30 years. I started studying it when I was 8 years old, and I've always been spiritual and connected to the universe and looking for answers. And I was drawn to astrology because it not only provided an insight into who I was, but also ancient people and my family and friends and relationships. And so I was always so curious about, you know, the past and history and myth and the depth of humanity. And that's the thing that I think is so cool about it too, is that I'm still always learning more. I'm seeing new insights. And in every single reading or show or, you know, person I connect with, I feel like the universe is showing me another face of God. And I'm able to interpret that and utilize that and harness that in my study and research of astrology as well. So yeah, it's been a long journey, and I've just hungered for insight and an understanding of why we're here and what lies ahead and what is fate, what is free will, like all of these kinds of things. And so, yeah, it's just been an eternal question journey. And I'm so grateful to be able to do what I do.
Oh, I love that. And what's interesting is I agree. I mean, I think being called to psychic mediumship, right? They call you. We don't exactly dial them up, right? They call us. And then it's up to us if we answer the call. And ultimately we do, because I believe spirit and the universe always wins, right? But how did you learn the art form of astrology? So is it something you study? Is there a blueprint? Like if we have a tarot reader, right? They have the cards and they're able to read the card or use the books if they want, or just be able to tune in. What is the faculties of astrology? Just assuming someone only has heard the term, but they don't really know what it is.
Well, astrology is the perception of where we stand in the cosmos. And that art form of it allows us to not only understand who we are or how a situation may develop or how a relationship exists, but also where we've been in the past, where we are in the present, and also where we're likely to go. Now, one thing I really do emphasize in my readings and in my teachings and in all of my shows is that astrology, yes, is predictive. That's why we go to a horoscope. We want to see what's the cosmic weather today, or are we going to find love, or, when am I likely to see a career move, or any of these kinds of things. And that is why I think a lot of people first come to it, because they want those answers of why or how or when. And I think that's really beautiful and powerful, but it's also a tool to help us to be productive in our lives. So it's predictive and productive. So for instance, going back to the example of me saying like, oh, Colby, I see there's an opportunity for you for money that's coming up, or love, or things of that nature. Now, we must engage with that energy and harness it. And I really do believe that whereas there is a certain level of predestination and fate, we also have free will. And going back to that example of like, let's say I see that there's love coming to someone. If someone's sitting on their couch and not going out and meeting people or engaging, they're blocking that energetic flow. And that's what's going to be a big problem to ultimately just look at it as predestination. Now, again, there are certain patterns that we are going to see that are exhibited from an energetic flow of a transit or in someone's natal chart. Like someone may have more opportunities in success or more around love or hardship or things of that nature. We have to step forward and engage with that energy in order to co-create our lives with the universe.
I love it. Yeah. So that's, again, in what I do, and I think it's probably some of the same, is aligning with the vibration, right?
Totally. Yes.
The vibration. Now we're manifesting. Now it's kicking it. And I don't know about you, but this is like a pet peeve of mine within my modality, is when I hear anybody talk about what you want to manifest and then you just release it to the universe and let them do their thing. And it's like, no, you have to participate. You have to show up. You have to be active, right?
Exactly. Yes.
The universe is not my butler.
Yeah. Well, here's an example too. It's like, and I'm sure you get this because obviously, you're renowned in your craft and you've been doing this for so much time and you're so skilled at it. But when people just come to you and they're just like, tell me how it's all going to unfold, or tell me exactly, the name of my lover or when it's going to happen. Again, we can see through our modalities that there is going to be a higher frequency or a higher likelihood to get certain things at certain times. But if you're not going to, I just can't, it just drives me crazy when people just expect that life completely happens to you. You have to be present. You have to work and you have to be co-creating. Oh my God, it just like drives me crazy. And I'm just like, no,
No, yes. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is, so for our layman or average person, and maybe they don't know how to read a chart, there is a sophistication, I think, to that, and an artwork, as you're saying, to that interpretation. But just for someone every day, are there ways for them to link into their own astrological path and connect to it? There's some simple ways that are easy for them to do that by chance.
The first and I think easiest thing to do is to go to a horoscope, because it's broken down in a way where you're going to be able to understand the astrological weather, the cosmic weather of that particular day or week or month. And that's one of the things that is so popular in my particular work. I make predictions for the entire year. I have daily horoscopes. I have all sorts of different kinds of predictions, because what we can see is that from the sacred geometry of the planetary alignments or the movement of the moon, we can see that flow is activating certain things. So, for instance, the moon could be in Taurus, and so we're feeling much more sensual, or we're feeling more focused on being practical or grounded, or even a little bit of indulgence. I mean, that's some energy of the moon in Taurus there too. But the thing that I always talk about is that we are experiencing astrology, the cosmic weather, on a collective level. Like, everyone is feeling that moon in Taurus at that point in time. But then by going to a horoscope, more often than not, usually for their sun sign or their rising sign, we can see more of the nuance. So let's say, you're a Capricorn sun or a Capricorn rising, and with the moon in Taurus, that could be activating more focus around fertility or creativity or romance on that particular day. So we're seeing a little bit more of the color, the nuance, the flair that may be more prominent for you. Now, I think that's the easiest way for someone to get involved in, and just knowing how to use it on a daily level, and trying to tap into that flow or tap into that vibration. Another example would be, on a collective level, let's say we have a full moon in Capricorn. Well, the energies of Capricorn are going to be more activated on a collective scale. So a full moon in Capricorn is great for professional concerns, or building your legacy, or looking at your ambitions and how you can shift and change. But then again, going to your individual particular horoscope, you'll get a little bit more of that flair about not only what's likely to happen and pop up for you, but how you can harness it. So that's something that I think is helpful.
So when we have the sun and the moon that are part of, is that coming from the time of day that you're born? Is that where that comes in? Or is it the day of the year? How is that influencing your astrological chart?
Well, here's the thing. Everything has a natal chart. Everything does. A nation does. A relationship does. My puppy does. We do. A business does. Like, everything has a natal chart. And what that does is it's a snapshot of that exact moment in time. Okay. And so not only do we see that it's going to activate certain energetic flows for the lifetime of that person or that company or that relationship, we are going to understand that there's ways to really sort of lean into that energy at that given time. Like, elections have big natal charts. Like, literally everything does. So I think, again, by looking at that exact moment of that incarnation, which would be the time of birth, the place of birth, and then the date of birth, we are able to put that into many different kinds of platforms and create that chart. Now, for people that don't have their time of birth, that can really stress them out, and it can make it a little bit more challenging to really either rectify the chart or know all of the nitty-gritty things that are likely to be taking place. But one thing that I also do talk about, and this is why horoscopes are so popular, is that even just from the sun sign, we're going to know that there are certain things being activated. Because usually I mean, the sun is the brightest force in our entire solar system. So it's the brightest force in our natal chart. Now, it's not the only factor. We have a moon sign, we have a rising sign, we have a Venus sign. Our houses, those are all very important. But even again, by knowing that sun, which is tied to your, it's tied to your identity, your ego, your life force, that comes from the day that you're born in the exact place of where the sun was in Western astrology at that point in time. So for you, you're an Aries sun. You're like, that's really crucial there. Like, right, you're an Aries sun? Yeah, you're an Aries sun. So like that force is always going to be powerful and important for you. But because of the time you were born and the place you were born, it shows that the moon was in Gemini for you, and you're also a Gemini rising. And that gives further insight too. So,
oh, that's very interesting. Okay, I got it. So I'm curious, a little bit of a curious question here. So when you're out dating and you find someone, you're like, oh, yummy, yummy. Do you kind of secretly do their chart before kind of going on those dates?
I mean, it would be a lie to say no. I mean, I do take a peek. I like to kind of have some insight into here. But the thing that I've dated every zodiac sign. I have been intimate with every zodiac sign. And I really know that, there may be certain zodiac signs that I'm more technically compatible with. Right. But if I fell in love with someone, it wouldn't matter what their sign was. And I will date anyone. And that's why I think, people that are, specifically like, oh, I'm a Virgo, I would never date a Sagittarius. Well, then you're cutting yourself off.
That's right.
From a potential really beautiful connection. And who knows, maybe your moons are in the same place, or you have some really other incredible astrological alignments that do outweigh that, and that goes back to a lot of different things. But the rising sign does help us see a lot of insight in the kinds of partners we attract. Like, I'm a Taurus sun, and that energy is very strong for me, but I'm an Aries rising, and most of my chart is in fire. So I've had wonderful relationships with Capricorns and other Tauruses, but if they don't have some fire or something else to stimulate it, I get bored, and I'm like, all right, bye. I need something else. And that's why we have the whole solar system inside of us, this tapestry, this masterpiece. So to look at one thing is limiting in itself, but that's why I think compatibility is so fascinating and beautiful to behold. Because, I mean, think about it in your life. I mean, the different kinds of relationships you have, there's so many different levels,
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, right, we can't decide prematurely what sign we're only going to be with, because we know how the universe is, and they're going to give you someone where you have to overcome things. You have to work through things, right? It's never smooth sailing, I think, with anybody. It is about coming together and working together. And I think that's part of our Muggle experience as well. It's just collectively, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you did a little bit of my chart. Maybe let's just kind of have a couple quick minutes, and then we could use it as an example to show the listeners, like, how does this work, or what could they expect in a session?
Totally. Well, as we were saying before, I need your exact time, place, and date of birth. And what we do is, usually what I do is I input it into, especially if I'm doing a client reading, whether it's a celebrity or someone worldwide or whatever it be, I try to input it into multiple different platforms to double check to make sure everything I'm getting is the same. And because sometimes I've seen like certain, apps or websites, they actually are a little off. And so if I'm giving someone a wrong interpretation, that's going to really mess up a lot. And even a shift of 1 degree is very potentially very profound. and we could see a lot of different kinds of things there. Now, as I was saying, so your sun is in Aries. If you were born a day before, you would have been a Pisces. And so you really are very close on the cusp. Now, one thing I do tell people, and a lot of people really, they'll be like, their birthday will be like, 4 or 5 days away from the transition. Or they'll be like, oh, I'm a cusp of Pisces, or I'm a cusp of Taurus. And I'm like, no. Cusps technically don't exist. And the reason they don't exist, I mean, they're very rare in the sense of them, is because your sun can't be in two places. Like, right, a planet can't be in two places. So you can't technically have two Venus signs, or two sun signs, But if you are born on the very last degree or the first degree, those are very powerful energy forces. So we could see a little bit more of a flow between them at that point in time. But, so I would certainly say for you, like the first thing is, read for Aries for, any predictions that you have going on. However, your rising sign, though, is Gemini. And a rising sign is how people perceive you. It's the mask that we wear. It tends to show physical attributes or your, maybe the way that you dress or, those kinds of things. It's tied to the identity, how you are embarking in your life. So for instance, a Gemini rising, they're very curious about everything. Like you want to learn and you want to explore and you want to talk and you want to think and you want to communicate. And if you're stuck in a box for too long, you're probably just going to freak out. Like you need constant different kinds of stimulation, whether that's media or relationships or social connections or learning or podcasts or all of these kinds of things. Now, someone that is a Gemini rising tends to be involved in careers or projects that are highly communication or travel focused. And so here we are on your podcast, it's you excel in speaking and teaching and talking to people about ideas. And so I really do love that. Now, going back to what I was saying with the rising sign, it also shows the kinds of partners on your descendant and the kinds of people that you're attracted to. And that's the 7th house. So that's really, really crucial to note. Whereas yours is Sagittarius and Neptune is conjunct your descendant. So typically I would say that, and this is funny, so usually people with a sign that's like dual signed, which would be, like Gemini or Pisces, they tend to always have like two partners or get married twice or have this kind of energy where it's like, even if it's like not like a marriage situation where you're like, okay, I found my person, but like then you need a very significant business partner. There's always a big duality with that kind of energy. So there is that. Your moon is also in Gemini. And so the moon sign is very tied to our inner emotional life, our soul. It can tap into like past lives as well. Our that emotional center. And for you, there's something important that I want to say here is, so I mean, what we see is that like that can mean that you like intellectualize your emotions a lot. If you you may very focus very much on like you need that constant, even like to talk about your feelings and express them and connect with someone. Otherwise, again, if you're like alone with your thoughts and emotions too much, you probably like second guess and like there's lots of like back and forth or like uncertainty, and so there's that again. It's like you need that constant flow of information, but your moon is in your first house, and that's a very significant placement for someone that is powerfully intuitive, powerfully, very in touch with your emotions. When people meet you, your emotions are present. They get to know that, but it also can be a placement of psychic energy and like I said, very strong intuitive energy for you too.
I love that.
Yeah, no, I love that too. So one thing that I do want to also mention for you that's really cool is that you have your sun in your 11th house, which is as well as your Mercury. And so the thing about this is that usually represents that you have powerful friends. There's a great deal of popularity that you've always felt throughout your entire life. It's like you can walk into a room and people just love you, and people are just drawn to you. That's really very significant. I think that's great. It can also be a really great placement for fans and connecting with communities and being a leader in communities, or working to be a leader in communities. These are all just great things. So there's that. The thing that I want to talk about when it comes to like a prediction for right now, and let me just quickly look this up for a second. You have Jupiter. So one of the things that I'm doing when I'm making predictions is there is a level of intuition, or looking at patterns and beliefs and seeing and charting them to see really how things are developing. Now, I look at an ephemeris, and an ephemeris charts the planets every single day. And so what we can see here is that when a planet is moving through a sector or engaging with your chart in a very powerful way, we can see from, a predictive standpoint, likely what's going to be taking place. Now, Jupiter is the planet of luck. And because you are, like I said, a Gemini rising, and you're a Gemini rising at 7 degrees. And again, I just get lost in people's charts because I just get so excited about their degrees. So starting on June 26th of this year, okay, Jupiter went into your first house. And so this is one of the luckiest periods of your entire life. And this is going to last until June 9th of 2025. Now, when this takes place, there's lots of new projects, new opportunities, so many new beginnings. And I think the coolest thing about it is that not only do we know that you're in a really lucky place, but I would, if I was sitting down with you and we were breaking down all of the different kinds of timings and things, I would have you right now or this weekend or in the next couple of weeks, really sit down and think of what you want to build in the next 12 years of your life. Because this is a 12-year cycle, and when Jupiter is in a place, we get more of it. We get more abundance. And with it being in your identity, with it being in your first house, it's really about your personal destiny. It's about your personal projects and what you desire and what you want to build. So if you knew that you were in the luckiest place of a 12-year cycle, what seeds are you planting? What do you want to build towards? Because you may not get everything that you want right now, but if you lay the seeds, you're very likely to set up a pattern that you will in the next 12 years. So,
I love that. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. So that's just like a basic, like just quick thing but isn't that cool that it just began?
Yeah, but I'm really glad we got this in. Yeah.
Right.
Can you imagine if you were like, well, you're halfway through the year and this is it. You got 6 months left. So this is very exciting. Yes. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go back to, where did you start, Kyle? Where did you grow up? I know you started this at like 8 years old, but where for you was like, all right, I'm meant to go to Los Angeles. This is what I'm meant to do. Like, how did that kind of come in for you, especially around astrology?
Well, growing up, I was always the weird astrology kid. I was the one that the first thing I would do is I would like ask someone's sign. And it's interesting because growing up, astrology was like never cool. And we would have, I would talk to people and I would, learn about, the different signs and what was likely to happen. But I also started to form my own insights and predictions, because sometimes what I like, I'm the kind of person that like will read a book and then I'll like want to figure out what I actually believe, if that's true or not. And so it can be the kind of thing where it'll be like, oh, Aquarius is this sign. And I'll be like, well, in my interactions with Aquarius, it hasn't actually been that way. So I started to really form my own hypotheses and philosophies about everything. But I've actually had many different journeys in my life and career that have led me to be where I am now. So, I mean, I wrote my first novel when I was 13 years old. I was a child actor growing up, so I knew, getting into Hollywood and, doing all sorts of films and plays and commercials. And it was just like I just had all of these different paths that were manifesting. And I also was born with psychic ability too. And so again, I was like learning that, and then I was learning religion, and it just all these different sort of experiences. And I went to school in college for psychology and English, and that put me on another path. And then when I graduated, I raised a bunch of money and built a production company, and we made films, and again, it was just all these different things. And that was what actually moved me to Los Angeles, is that I had some projects in television that I was in pursuit of. And again, it was, throughout the entire time, I was always still learning and doing readings and expanding my awareness of what is life and why am I here, and, what is my purpose and how can I make the world a better place. And there was this really interesting transition period where I was looking at my chart, and I always felt like in my career previously as a filmmaker, I would like get so far and then I could like never break through. Like I'd like have meetings with like big companies and agents, and they'd be like, "We love it. It's amazing. We think you're brilliant." And then something would happen and I would like the deal would not go through, or like suddenly the actor I was working with would like quit, or it just like crazy stuff. And I was always like, what is the problem with this? Like, what am I getting wrong? If, I'm in Hollywood, I have wonderful connections. I love living in LA. And I looked at my chart and I noticed that there was going to be this very big transition that was taking place. Like my whole life was about to change. And during that period in time, I was posting predictions online, and, they started going viral. I started getting interviews in the press around astrology. That just started, manifesting out of nowhere. And I also, just to make extra money, I started doing readings in astrology and tarot for celebrities. And the reason that happened is because through my filmmaking career, I like met celebrities and I met people in LA. So it was just one of these things where I was like, okay, I need some extra money. I'm really good at this. And people, so then like I did one celebrity, and then suddenly they're introducing me to their friends, and then I do another, and then it just became this big like destiny. And I'm so grateful because I've never had a deeper level of fulfillment and happiness around what I do and do in the media. And then again, it's just like things just kept, picking up. I'm a big workaholic, so I'm always working. I'm always doing all sorts of stuff. But it just like I kept, crushing it and slaying, and then one door would open, and maybe one door would close, but it would redirect me. And again, it's just been this like really fascinating and incredible journey. And there's a lot of really, really big stuff that not only can I see in my chart coming up, but I also like know, like I've had it confirmed with, my agents and business associates, and I'm just so grateful to be who I am, doing what I am, living the life that I am. And I want more. I want to build more and experience more and share my light more. And I'm really, really, really hoping to do that, and confident that I will.
And that's exciting. I think when we find our purpose and really allow ourselves to live authentically, there's just such a peace and joy in that, There's just such a, you're not dealing with the grind of going to an office to do something you're not passionate about or that you don't want to do. There is this kind of peace and balance and joy, I think, that naturally comes in with that. So it is really neat. And I always think that our paths, our past careers certainly lend to our current and future careers, right? Everything we do and every experience we have, I think really is a piece of what we are in the place to do and what we will be doing in the future as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, even, even if we take that and break that down and not even just think of career, but we look at family and we look at relationships and, all of those heartbreaks or all of those life lessons or, redirections, we're here to ultimately put us in a direction, hopefully, where we get more of what we're looking for. And another thing that I talk about with astrology is that, like, even if someone, let's say, has like a challenging chart, or there's a challenge in your relationships, or there's some really bad cosmic weather or a really messed up full moon, the universe is not here to punish you. The universe is not trying to hurt you. And I think a lot of people get into that like woe is me mentality where they're like, oh, I can't make a change, or I'm just cursed, or I just, it's not meant for me. And I'm like, no, that's not entirely what the universe is saying. It's saying that you need to find a different path, or you need to find a different perspective or pattern or behavior. And, like, I've seen it a lot in LA. I mean, and I'm sure you have too. It's like there's these people that like are so passionate about being an actor or being a writer, but then there's like a delusion around it. And it's like, whereas their chart may not necessarily say that like they have a lot of activation around it, but then they may, sit back and not go on the audition, or like, feel like, oh, they just like, they're never going to make it, but they like won't leave it behind. And it's like the universe, like, not everyone can be famous. Not everyone can be successful. Not everyone can be in love. But I do think that by trying to live a life of fulfillment and using astrology and intuitives and the tools that we have, we can put ourselves in a position to hopefully at least put ourselves in the position to do that. And that's really what I use astrology with my clients for. It's like, okay, let's plan and then take advantage of what we've got and sidestep out of something that may not be working, but also feel confident in where we're building
in
our
the
lives
next
with.
steps. Yeah. Okay, so in finishing up, what if you had to kind of come up with 3 hacks for astrology for our listeners? What do you, off the top of your head, what would those 3 hacks be?
I mean, again, I think the understanding that it's predictive as well as productive, not being limited by it, but understanding that we're going to walk into that energy. It's kind of like, let's say we look at the weather forecast and we know it's going to rain. Well, you're going to bring an umbrella. You wear a raincoat, whatever that be. So using it as a tool to create your life and work with that energy, I think, is the first. The second is to understand that by looking at a natal chart or looking at our sun sign or our traits, we can lean into our strengths and also be aware of challenges we may exhibit. And again, not just being like, oh, I'm a Scorpio, or oh, I'm an Aries, and just using it as an excuse to have behavior that may not be acceptable. It's about being the full encompassed individual and the beautiful individual that we are. And then I think the final thing here would be to also look at the way that we can better be present and productive and fulfilled in our relationships. So by understanding someone else's zodiac sign or their natal chart, we can see that there are certain things that may unite us or really, help us to grow. And that's why I think that, even if we got our favorite zodiac signs or favorite kinds of people, the zodiac is perfect in its design. And the fact that we can understand that there are people that are going to have different opinions or personalities or motivations than we do, it helps humanity to come together rather than looking at how we're apart. So I think that's the stuff that I would say.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And Kyle, it's been so amazing having you. If you don't mind just taking a moment, let's just tell the listeners where they can find you. I know you have a website, you have Patreon. Share all the details of where we can find you, where they can follow you, please.
Perfect. Well, my website is kylethomasastrology.com. I release all sorts of horoscopes there, and there's a lot of content about, what is astrology, how to work with it. I have a celebrity encyclopedia there as well for people that are really into pop culture. My Instagram is where I post a lot of content, and it's Mr. Kyle Thomas, so MrKylethomas. Give me a follow there. I release daily content, all sorts of horoscopes. My Patreon community is the thing that I'm putting a lot of time and energy into at this point in time. And I'm really falling in love with that community because it really gives me more access to connect with people on a more intimate level. And so I'm really excited about that. I mean, there's 3 different tiers. People can get daily horoscopes there. They can get, discounts on readings. They can get, horoscopes months in advance that I don't release to the public. So there's a lot of in-depth and exclusive content there. And so that's also the Patreon, this Kyle Thomas Astrology. And yeah, I mean, I feel like those are the biggest areas to reach me. I mean, I have a weekly column, weekly horoscope with People Magazine. I'm doing all sorts of different TV projects and, Good Morning America. So yeah, I'm a little bit of here, there, all over. And I just love connecting with people. So, reach out. But thank you for having me. I really respect and honor you. I think you are beautiful and talented. And it's just such an honor to work with you.
Oh, it's been so great, Kyle. And I just love how you are helping just thousands and thousands and thousands of people every single day have better direction and clarity in their lives. So bravo to following that whisper of your soul. And again, thank you for your energy, for your time today. And I definitely look forward to having another chat with you. So just thank you so much for being here with us today. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thank you so much, Kyle, for being here. Thank you guys for tuning and listening in. Please be sure to follow Kyle. Join his Patreon. I'm sure that will be a lot of fun to get that in-depth and customized detail there as always, everyone, thank you guys so much for following, for liking. Please feel free to leave a review. It certainly does help the podcast. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to The Colby Rebel Show. Be sure to follow Colby on social media at Psychic Rebel. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please head on over to iTunes to leave a review to help Colby grow the tribe. Colby is an international psychic medium, teacher, best-selling author, and speaker. She is a master teacher of the Lisa Williams International School of Spiritual Development and is the owner of the Colby Rebel Spirit Center in Los Angeles. Visit colbyrebel.com.